Plagiarism, Charley Crockett. Not necessarily, or necessarily. Yeah, you're right. It's a question, though. Yeah. Charley Crockett. Charley Crockett. Back in the early days of Hood Fishing, even before the channel ever had a name or ever existed, there was Charley Crockett. Yeah, you're right. So, Charley Crockett is from Texas, but he had an uncle that lived down in southeast Louisiana and New Orleans, in that area. Well, West Bank, I think, as well. I think his uncle may have lived on the West Bank. So, Charley Crockett would come here in the early days when he was young, very young, and hang out with his uncle. But when he got older in the 2000s, in the 2010s, he was living on the streets, not necessarily like a gutter punk or a squatter kid or a crusty kid or something like that, train hopper, but he became someone who walked down that path. He train hopped, hitchhiked, that sort of thing. The truth is, he was busking in the French Quarter for a good while. Ooh, we're cockeyed. Let's get that straight. It's always cockeyed in here. This house is just cockeyed. You think it's the camera, but then you realize it's the lines. It's the whole thing. It's all cockeyed. It's all going downhill that way at an angle. Not much I can do about it. So Charley Crockett is one of the many lucky ones that didn't go downhill when they were busking. I shouldn't say one of the many. I should say one of the few. Sometimes it seems like a lot of people who have this kind of history playing music on the streets get some sort of success, but it's in the eyes of the internet. It's under that guise, right? Under that lens. And that's a funny way of looking at things. I mean, the reality is, like, back in the day, when we're talking back in the Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings kind of day, you could be on top and still broke dick, right? Because the labels, Nashville was taking it all from you. So internet fame can make you look like you're something, like you're rich, and you're still broke dick. Busy, busy, busy. Working hard. When you look at the numbers and you look at the views, it looks like you're on top. But when you look at the actual dollars, at the actual nickels and dimes, it's just nickels and dimes. You're nickel and diming it, right? Someone once told me, give up on your dreams and go work at Walmart. And yeah, obviously I don't work at Walmart. But Charley Crockett, he was around in those early days of me building Hood Fishing. He was rubbing shoulders with people that fished with me back in the day, like Jason from the Holcomb High Rollers, who was also in Skinny Tuba or something. I can't remember the name of that band. It's more of his jazz band that he was a member of. But his country thing was Holcomb High Rollers, and I think Holcomb High Rollers is still around, but I see that account leaving comments, and I believe Jason's using that account on YouTube. Holcomb High Rollers. Anyway, I think I remember him busking back right before I started Hood Fishing. I was working for Vertimart, and then I was working for Jim Thorpe, and then I had Hood Fishing. In that period where I was transitioning from one thing to another and then starting to build my YouTube career, he was busking, right? And back in the early days when Hood Fishing was like nothing, there were a lot of street musicians of the country and western ilk, bluegrass and stuff like that. A little bit of jazz, some jazz bros in there, but there was a lot of those guys fishing with me. Obviously, those people have moved on. 2016 had a lot to do with it. They went one way and I went the other, and still have him for president, and hopefully we keep going. Anyway, I won't go into that, but you could, if you get my drift, they, yeah, they went blue, I went red. So they're no longer fishing with me, but they still kind of comment here and there. So I kind of remember him vaguely, right? And now he's got the big britches on, and I like his music. I just started really listening to his music, and my opinion at first, after a bit of a dive into it, was, wow, his standards, you know what a standard is? That's like a song that's been around for a long time. Actually, the term standard means for basically a song that nobody owns, but a lot of times these days we will call really old classic country songs that may be copyrighted standards, just because it's a standard across the board. Everybody plays it, everybody covers it, right? But it's not necessarily legally a standard. Okay, so my opinion of Charley Crockett's music now is that, or I have a bit, this is the opinion I developed a few weeks ago, that his standards are really good, and his originals sound like really good standards. And I kept listening, and then I started to wonder about things, and then I watched his interview he did a few months back with Joe Rogan on, you know, the Joe Rogan podcast. And he admitted to something that cleared up a lot of things to me, but Joe Rogan didn't call him out. Joe Rogan didn't catch it. Joe Rogan's a fan of his too. So what he admitted to was how the song A Man from Waco came about. He admitted that it was actually someone else's song, like a really old song that he liked, and he played it in a different key at first, and then maybe some other changes to the actual music, and then let it evolve into A Man from Waco. Like, he basically took someone else's arrangements, kind of rearranged them, played them in a different key, maybe for a different tempo, and put new words to it. I don't know how you see that, but that sounds like plagiarism to me. It gets into a gray area when someone else's work is heavily inspiring someone else's work so much that they sound really similar. You could say that is plagiarism, but you might have a hard time in a court of law with it, right? But he basically admitted to how he created that, A Man from Waco. It was basically from one song and then turn it into another. Inspiration from one makes another, right? So some of his other songs follow under those lines. In this video, I'm only going to talk about two songs. A Man from Waco. Sorry, I can't remember who the artist was that he got the inspiration from, where he basically studied the arrangement and just put it over here in a different form, changed it. But I do want to talk about an artist that he used to create the song Spade. And this artist I know very well. And when I heard the song Spade by Charley Crockett, I was in the other room doing something behind a shut door, and my ears perked up, and I went, "That's Waiting Around to Die" by Townes Van Zandt. And I walked into the room where the music was playing. I looked at the laptop, and I saw Charley Crockett, Spade. I was like, oh, I haven't heard this song. What? Is this a cover of Waiting Around to Die? It sounds a little different. It sounds like it's in a different key with a slightly different tempo. But the melody is the same, right? Same exact melody. Words, the lyrics in Spade fall in the same place of the melody that the words in Waiting Around to Die fall in. It sounds like Waiting Around for Die, like Spitting Image, but like I said, it's a different key and it might be a slightly different tempo, but it's the same melody, right? How uncanny is that? What's the possibility of that just happening without it coming from point A to point B? You know what I'm saying? Like you never heard Waiting Around to Die by Townes Van Zandt, but somehow by the luck of the draw, you wrote a song that sounds just like it. How likely is that? Not very likely. One has to do a lot with the other for that to happen, right? To happen so perfect. Now, you could love a song so much and just, it's in your mind so deep that you end up writing a song that has parts that sound a lot like it. Like, you could do this subconsciously, but not so perfectly. You think about the way this works out. He doesn't just go like, oh, wake up in the morning and record this song out of existence, you know, like it didn't exist before he woke up. No, it develops over time, and it takes several sessions to work it out, flesh it out before you do a master. So there's plenty of time for someone to go, hey, Charley, don't you think this sounds like Waiting Around to Die by Townes Van Zandt? It's so uncanny that you can like find plenty of people on the internet with the same opinion. Google AI will be like, oh yeah, it is the same melody. It's confirmed, it's the same melody. So how much of it is original? Well, just the lyrics, pretty much. The lyrics are the only original thing. Now, he hasn't been drawn into court over plagiarism. There's no claims like that, no legal claims. There's a lot of blog posts and other things out there where people are accusing him of not being authentic, some plagiarism, but no real proof, right? Like, it just kind of got swept under the rug. You can like a musician and respect them, but when you find things like this, you need to call it out for what it is. But if he admits openly, if he talks like on Joe Rogan, he openly talks about this song is heavily inspired by this song, that's cool. But when you're just trying to say, oh no, they have no relationship, when you can clearly hear it, even someone who's not a musician can hear it, you know, when you're trying to say that they're not related, that's probably worse than just saying, yeah, I'm heavily inspired by that song, I admit it. Waiting Around to Die, heavily inspired Spade. So there's room for forgiveness there. You understand what I'm saying? Room for forgiveness when you are honest about it. And he seems to be honest about it, at least with A Man from Waco. I've not heard him address the Spade issue, but other people have talked about it. And a lot of people are like, well, it's just the same melody. We're not saying that, you know, he's breaking the law. We're just saying you can't really call Spade that much of an original song musically, because it sounds like Waiting Around to Die, like too dang close. Other bands have done this before in other genres and been called out for it. It's just something that exists. But one thing you got to understand is the way traditional music works. When you're coming up as a musician, you're pretty much forced to cover songs. Whether it's by a record company or record label, or when you're on the sidewalk busking, especially there when you're busking, people will walk up and they don't want to give you money until you play a certain song. And I hate to say it, but if you've ever been in this situation, you know this is true. Too many damn people will ask for Stairway to Heaven over and over and over again. Over and over again. And so you end up playing other people's songs over and over again, other standards and stuff. So it might be just a hazard of being a musician, coming up as he came up. He wasn't rich. He didn't come up as a rich kid with a silver spoon in his mouth. I mean, he came up from the bottom. So yeah, he came up playing other people's songs, such as a lot of country singers and songwriters and other people from other genres came up as well that way, because they, it's hard for new bands to book gigs sometimes without playing covers, because people want to hear something familiar, right? It's hard to get a start with your own shit. You just have to do it for a long time. You got to be punk rock about it and be like, you want to hear Stairway to Heaven? Here you go. Go find it yourself, buddy, and play your own shit, and just don't stop. Keep doing it. So maybe it's just a hazard of the function, a hazard of coming up, playing other people's shit, and you do it so much that sometimes your shit sounds like their shit. But you got to call it out. You can't be like, oh, his originals. Well, he's got some originals that are fully functioning as originals, and then he's got some that are just polished off standards with new words. And they're good still, but that's what they are. Does that make him a plagiarist? If he admits to being inspired by other songs, it's 50-50. It's not really that egregious, but it is what it is. It's a song heavily inspired by another song, so much that it sounds just like the original song, but with different lyrics. There's a lot of that. You just can't be like, oh, there's no relationship. This is totally original. It's just happenstance. Doesn't happen like that. Yeah, you're right. Dogs are hungry and time to go. Feed the dogs. Thanks for watching, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, being a member of the channel. And yeah, you're right. I'll see y'all next time.